Hello and welcome to the Astrology Forecast. My name is Sage, here as your eye into the sky, letting you know what the cosmic events are for the week, why they matter, and how you can use this information in your everyday life. So I have to start by saying that it is the final week of Mercury retrograde. Depending on when you're listening to this, it might even be over. So really good news in store. Make sure you're listening to the end of this week's forecast because I will be discussing what this means and how to work with the final days of the retrograde, as well as what to do after Mercury goes direct. So some pretty good news. It's been a really turbulent month, especially if you're a fixed sign. Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, or Aquarius. My heart is with you guys. Check on your fixed sign friends, you guys, because it has definitely been a very up and down month, especially with the eclipse, the retrograde, and then we had this massive conjunction between Jupiter and Uranus just last week. Would love to hear about how that's going for everybody. I know a lot of us did feel the effects of that, the ripple effects of this really rare, very notable astrological event that did go exact over the weekend. Couple announcements. I am now taking bookings for May readings. If you are interested in learning what the planets have in store for you, essentially, what are the planets doing in your chart? How is this going to influence you? What you can expect and be prepared for, what to look forward to. It's basically like getting some cosmic tools in your toolbox for the month of May. And it just allows you to flow a lot easier, knowing ahead of time what you can expect. If you're interested in that, they're only $50 and it's a full hour reading. The link is below if you want to click that. And of course, the link will send you to my full page where you'll be able to not only book a May reading, but if you're a Taurus, I am offering 50% off solar return readings and 30% off of birth chart readings. Also, if you're interested in joining us this summer for the Utah Stargazing Retreat, more information is down below. We would love to have you join us. The dates are July 31st through August 5th. And last but not least, I'm really excited to say that my following is growing here. I know it's taken us some time as I have made that switch in the last 6 months from Instagram to YouTube. So shout out to all of you who have been consistently tuning in and following and subscribing and liking and just showing love. I really, really appreciate it. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It's there for you. Please go ahead and make sure you have clicked that. It would really help me out. I appreciate it. And it also just helps spread the word, right? More and more people can then know what this information is and use it to their benefit. If you do get value from this video, please make sure that you hit the like button right there. And if you are somebody who's interested in getting weekly updates, the notification bell is there if you are interested in being notified when a new forecast is posted. So with that, I do want to make a note. Please look at where you have Scorpio in your chart. Yes, I know, it's a different sign. We haven't talked about Scorpio much lately, but we do have the full moon in Scorpio. Depending on when you're listening to this, it is either before the Scorpio full moon or it's after. But even if it is after, definitely stay tuned and listen deeply because that's what Scorpio is all about. It's about going deep. And usually when we go deep, we do need some time to also reflect on what's happened. Also, the energy of the full moon can last for more than just a day. So it's likely that we are feeling the energy of this full week of this full moon energy. So check out where you have Scorpio in your chart. Also, check out where you have Taurus in your chart, very important. And lastly, if you want to do some extra reflection on the retrograde that is ending this week, make sure you know where Aries is in your chart. And with that, let's dive into the cosmic events for this week. All right, so beginning the week on Tuesday, April 23rd, we have a full moon in Scorpio. Now, this is the first lunation that we are experiencing since the eclipse series that just ended a few weeks back. Now, this is a full moon, which typically can bring up a lot of emotions, as full moons are times when we can do a lot of release, emotional release. There's a lot of illuminating the things that we don't always look at because, again, the moon is a very hidden energy, right? It's a private energy. But when it's fully illuminated, suddenly those things that were kept private aren't so private anymore. And that actually kind of goes really hand in hand with the theme and the energy of this particular full moon. Now, I wish I could say that this full moon was like really calm and really nice after the whole craziness of eclipse season and retrograde. but it's a little bit more intense than one would expect. It has been an intense month, right? We cannot lie, with all the craziness going on of all these astrological events happening at the same time. It's a lot to digest, it's a lot to work through. This full moon, now, the good thing about this full moon is it is out of eclipse season, which means we can work with the lunar energies. This is the green light to do your lunar rituals, manifestation work, whatever that looks like for you. Get magical with it, right? That's what Scorpio energy is about. That's what full moons are about. And it just so happens that this particular full moon in Scorpio is out of eclipse season. So it does allow us to work with the energy uninhibited, so to speak. So that's a really positive thing. Now, when we have a full moon, keeping in mind some basics of astronomy, this means that the sun and moon are on two opposite sides of the earth. The sun is in the constellation sign of Taurus, while the moon is in its opposite sign of Scorpio. So we're working with this Taurus Scorpio axis right here. Okay, we've got Taurus, the sun in Taurus, and moon in Scorpio. Now, Scorpio Taurus is essentially this axis of life and death. If you even think about it in terms of the tropical zodiac, we have Taurus season happening during the springtime. What happens in springtime? Things come to life. Right? This is when animals in the wild are being born. This is when we start to see flowers and vegetables and crops, coming up from the coldness of the ground that the winter time created, and all of a sudden things warm up and things come to life, right? Life emerges in the spring, which is the fixed energy of Taurus. Taurus season happens in the middle of springtime, right? You're in the midst of spring. Now, opposite of Taurus is Scorpio. Scorpio season happens in November, essentially. Now, this is the time of the year when things are starting to get colder, when we're leaving that, life and vitality, and we're entering into more of that darkness, into more of that constriction. And again, it's colder. It represents death in a way. And not to get super morbid here, we don't have to mean it physically and literally, but symbolically, this is what Scorpio Taurus is all about. I heard another astrologer relating it to like a garden. And as we know, gardens, they have both life and death, right? There's death in a garden, but that also gives way to new life. And so this is really the energy that we're working with here. Again, if you know where Taurus and Scorpio are in your chart, bonus points, it's going to help you out a lot more, because now you're able to see, oh, okay, so this energy is showing up in this area of my life. So I can expect to feel more emotionally charged about whatever area of life is getting the most activated right now. Now, this particular full moon is a bit more intense than usual. Reason being is it is in square, it is squaring Pluto. Pluto's in Aquarius. Now, again, this is why my fixed signs out there, we're really getting hit, okay? Because we're now utilizing and activating 3 out of the 4 fixed signs. Okay, take out the Leo, we've got Pluto in Aquarius, we've got the Sun in Taurus, and we've got the Moon in Scorpio. And so, with that being said, this particular energy is really setting us up for themes of power, transformation. It's interesting. Pluto is the modern day ruler of Scorpio, and it's in square with this full moon in Scorpio, which is really bringing a lot of tension, a lot of intensification to this lunation, really activating these Plutonian and Scorpion themes and energies. And when we've got them together activated in this way, squares are not super comfortable, by the way. They can often represent like more tension and areas of friction. This is definitely grounds for transformation. Pluto being the planet of death and rebirth, it's all about regeneration, and similar to Scorpio, right? That's what Scorpio represents. And even opposite to that, Taurus, which again does represent life, new life, but at the same time, life does emerge out of the darkness, which, many of us can associate with death, quote unquote. And so we really are working with these themes of shedding one's skin, of not remaining the same. So much has happened in the last month, ever since, really March 29th, which is when we had that initial eclipse. That was really what kind of thrusted us into this really wacky cosmic, few weeks. And we probably dealt with some beginnings in life, some changes, some potential endings, some resets, some shifts going on. All of this is likely, maybe one thing I said stuck, maybe all things. But it's likely that we have experienced some turbulence in the last few weeks. This particular full moon is that kind of that last ditch effort from whatever you believe in, whatever higher power you believe in, to really activate us, to really ask us to look at what we're releasing. It's a full moon in Scorpio. Emotionally, we are having to go deep, and we're going beneath the surface here, which is what Scorpio is all about. And we're really almost like pulling up all that sludge, all that drudge, all that stuff that's been living beneath the surface and potentially hasn't even been looked at and given attention. And suddenly it's emerging to the surface. The moon in Scorpio is in full illuminance, and it's finally like we're able to witness these emotions that have been repressed and within our body. Remember, our issues live in our tissues, and the moon rules over the physical body. And so we're really pulling up a lot of these buried, these trapped feelings, potentially triggers and traumas, things that we don't want to look at. This is a really good supportive full moon for shadow work. If you're somebody that's really looking to do some healing, this is the moment in 2024 when we're really being asked to go deep. And I know you hear that, and I even looked at the astrology of this, and I'm like, not again. Like, we've gone deep, right? We're just getting out of retrograde, which is a time of reflection. So yes, it's kind of that last ditch effort, that last hurrah. All right, after this week, I promise the astrology gets way better. All right, we're getting Venus entering her own sign, Mars is entering its own sign. We're getting a lot of positive alignment going on in May. May is a really good month of just calm, good, positive, supportive energy. But March, and really mainly April was a really wild month. So if you're looking back at April and you're thinking, is it almost over? Yes, it is almost over. I promise you that by the time we are done with April, things will get a lot smoother. But with that being said, some major themes are emerging during this full moon. Again, transformation. We're looking at ways that we can shed old habits, old triggers, and again, this might force us to look at those triggers, but know that we have to go through it. All right. We cannot go around it. We cannot stop and wait because nothing's going to happen by doing that. Okay. This is fixed energy. It's easy to get stuck. We don't want to get stuck. Biggest piece of advice is to keep flowing. This is fixed energy, but it's water. It's fixed water. So when water is fixed, yes, it can certainly stay very solid and become like ice, but it can also flow in one focused direction like a river. All right, so we want to be more like a river than like an iceberg, right? We know what happens with icebergs, they can be very destructive, whereas rivers allow things to flow and be moved and utilized to their benefit. And so, with that being said, a lot of emotional energy is coming up for us. Let's dive into 3 different ways that we can really work and utilize this cosmic energy. Okay, so we're going to dive into 3 different ways that you can work with this full moon in Scorpio. And again, this can also apply to the days even after the full moon in Scorpio. So keep in mind, this is not just tied to Tuesday, the 23rd. You can use these tips, this advice throughout the entire week. Now, really quick, before I dive into that, I also want to make a special note. This full moon is in alignment, right? It's in correlation with the new moon in Scorpio that we experienced back in November of 2023. Now, it was actually specifically November 13th, 2023. I'm making a special point to bring that up because if you think back to that time in your life and you consider what new things were beginning for you, what kind of was starting up, what seeds were being planted, it would be interesting to now reflect 6 months later during this full moon in Scorpio and actually see how whatever that was back in November actually has manifested now that we are in the full moon of that original new moon. So just want to put that out there, excuse me, because a lot of the time we forget that the full moons and the new moons, they work in harmony with one another, right? They correlate. And it's a 6 month cycle. So we have a new moon in Scorpio, and then 6 months later we have a full moon in Scorpio. And just like how I've always said it, basically new moons are about initiations and planting new seeds, and then the full moon is all about culmination and celebration and also release. So again, keep this in mind as we are experiencing this full moon this week. What themes are coming back up for us that maybe began 6 months ago? All right, so with that being said, let's dive into 3 different ways you can work with this energy, whether this be before or in the days following the full moon in Scorpio. Number one, honor the contrast. Okay, during this full moon, we are really working with themes of light and dark. Okay, this is becoming really apparent because, again, that Taurus Scorpio axis is so potent when it comes to this particular archetype, right? This particular energy of something being all about birth and then the other thing being all about death, right? And so honor the darkness because we wouldn't have light if we didn't have dark. And it's so easy to honor the light. It is so easy to appreciate the light and to really only fixate and focus on that because not many of us are signing up to look at the darkness, right? Not many of us are choosing, volunteering to go into that darkness that could be scary. That's why Scorpio is one of the most bravest signs because most people don't want to go there. Now, honoring that darkness does also mean sitting with some shadows potentially, sitting with the darkness. And at the same time, honoring the light because we wouldn't know dark if we didn't also know light. So, in a larger kind of spiritual way, this full moon can certainly be bringing up these feelings, and really, it could feel like a major contrast. But pay attention to not just where you are if you're in the darkness, but also, again, that's that Scorpio energy. But look to the opposite side. Look to the Taurus. Look to the light. What is being birthed out of the darkness? That's what you got to ask yourself. All right, number two, create space for deeper emotional issues to emerge, right? And this is intentional. These issues, all of us have issues, right? Nobody gets out of life with no issues. Depending on how deep you want to go, there might be things that are lurking way into our subconscious that we aren't even aware of. Now, I'm not recommending that you go and, travel 10 layers deep into your subconscious mind through hypnosis or whatever means you choose. You can. That's awesome if you want to. But what I'm really saying here is just create some type of space where you can feel the feelings because this is what this full moon's about. It's about bringing up the feelings that haven't been felt so we can feel them. And then once we feel, we heal, right? What we feel, we heal. This is really the motto of the full moon in Scorpio. So allow yourself to heal by feeling these deeper, potentially darker emotions. Keeping in mind, too, this is extremely beneficial and detoxifying for not only your spiritual body, definitely your emotional body, but even your physical body. Because again, the moon represents the physical body, right? It actually has the closest connection on a cosmic and physical level to our physical body, right? The moon controls the tides, which are water. Our bodies are about 75-80% water. So, yes, we definitely, women, I'm sure we all can agree, we're affected by the moon and its cycles. So, that already is a given. When we're dealing with Scorpio, this is why we want to go deep and clean out. Clean out. Literally, this is like our spring cleaning. This is like emotional spring cleaning. Okay. This is what this full moon's all about because we really want to get rid of the things that are not helping us to emerge and evolve to that next level. And so, create that space, journal, meditate, have a good cry, listen to that song that you know is going to get you in your feelings, but it'll also allow those feelings to come up. Think about it like wringing out a towel, right? Or a sponge or something. You want to get rid of those emotions, and often, yes, this can be through crying, or maybe you're somebody that likes to yell, or I don't know. Again, I'm not gonna categorize anybody here, but just keep in mind you want to create intentional space. If you feel those emotions coming up, this is not the time to push them down. This is the time to allow them up and to feel whatever that is and pay attention because it might be teaching you something. All right, the third one, let go of what you cannot control. This is a big theme I'm seeing with this particular full moon. The fact that it's squaring Pluto, the planet of control and power, and even potentially manipulation, that it can be a big cause of concern. But also remember that when themes of control come up, just like that contrast teaches us, the opposite of control is release. And so be okay with releasing that which you cannot control. because it's easy to get fixated when we're dealing with Taurus, Scorpio, and Aquarius. These are three fixed energies. Fixed is exactly what it implies, right? You're getting stuck in one spot. And this is great for focus, but it also can result in obsession. And so, if we do not release things we cannot control, if instead we get hyper fixated on those things that are stressing us out, causing that tension, it is likely that we might feel some tension in these days. So, instead of going all in and hyper fixating on things, right, do the opposite and release. Because if we don't, this can lead to obsession. This could even lead to paranoia. That's an actual, potential consequence of working with Pluto energy in a maybe less empowered way. So really allow yourself that space, and at the same time, don't try so hard to change what obviously is not budging. It might feel frustrating, and that's not uncommon when dealing with fixed energy. There can be a stubbornness, a fixedness, a feeling like things are slow and not moving and just frustrating. But this is not that moment, right? We don't want to get super stuck and fixed on those things that are immovable. Instead, we want to just release and allow and do the work that we can control, right? Allow yourself that space to feel and heal, and know that those things that you cannot get done and figured out right now, it's okay. Take a deep breath. And again, I have a feeling that once this retrograde is over at the end of April, actually April 25th, so this week, I have a feeling that things will become a lot more flowing and easier and smoother, especially as we go into May. So, some good things on the horizon. This is really just that last little push to really round out the eclipse, the retrograde, and now this pretty intense full moon. All right, and to round out the week, the last cosmic event, the last major cosmic event that we're experiencing is happening on Thursday, April 25th. This is Mercury finally stationing direct in Aries. So, hallelujah. By Thursday, Mercury retrograde is officially over. If you're on Eastern Standard Time, it's technically at 9 a.m. All right, I actually looked up the exact time because, again, consider that Mercury retrograde is this like cosmic break point, right? It's a pause. And during this pause, it's really recommended to not so much focus on external things, but instead to focus on internal things, right? That's just like what retrogrades are all about. It's like literally turning the mirror around, and like all of a sudden the work becomes a lot more inward and a lot more reflective than it once was. Now, this particular retrograde was a doozy, not gonna lie. It started on April 1st, literally smack dab right in the middle of the eclipse portal. And it really just added another layer of intensification to the month of April. Again, we're almost out of this. I promise it's going to be a lot smoother coming up in May. But I will say, this particular retrograde was really ripe for reflection and also kind of more of that surrender, because again, often retrogrades can make things go a little crazy, a little haywire. We might have our technology glitching out, we might have communication issues. I know for myself, I my retrograde energy that I noticed coming up a lot this past few weeks was I had to keep returning and going back to places. Again, keep in mind retrograde is like you have to go back, you reverse, you rewind. That's why people and situations from the past come back up, because it's like forcing you to look in the rearview mirror. Well, for me personally, I was having to go back and like return items that I bought. I bought like bedding, didn't like it, had to go back return it. I bought leggings, they ripped like the first day I bought them, had to go back and return them from Amazon, which was surprisingly easy actually. If you saw my Instagram story, I got my nails done, and the Jupiter Uranus conjunction, for reasons I'm not even going to get into right here, completely affected my physical appearance. And I was like ready to make a change and just do something super different. Uranus energy here. I always say Uranus is the planet of like WTF. And your girl walked out of the nail salon with bright green nails. Never again. Had to go back to the nail salon the following day and fix them. So of course I got them back to where they should have been. Um, but point is that there's been a lot of having to go back and relook at situations, even on a personal level, right? And that's again typical for every retrograde. Now, this particular one being in Aries, I will say the theme here was really refocusing, taking a second look back and kind of resetting oneself, in the sense that Aries is the sign of self, right? It was opposite to Libra. And we did have the Libra eclipse as well. So both Aries and Libra were really getting hit hard. Honestly, cardinal signs and fixed signs both were getting the brunt of things. So if you're a mutable sign, Pisces, Virgo, Sagittarius, Gemini, y'all got a little easier this particular month. But again, cardinal signs, fixed signs, any sign I named that I didn't just name, been a doozy. Now, again, going back to the retrograde, having this end is really positive because this means that we can move forward with things, making big purchases. I've personally been waiting to do a couple of things financially until after the 25th, because why get caught up in the retrograde energy when you're trying to deal with numbers and communication and transactions of any sort? So again, if you've been kind of holding off and waiting, this would be the time, right? End of April, beginning of May, great time to make those big investments, to, again, go on that trip. Not saying you couldn't travel during retrograde, but I have a feeling if you go now after the 25th, it'll just be a lot smoother. You don't have to be on edge waiting for your flight to get delayed or canceled, or having to go back to your hotel room because you forgot something 10 times, right? That's just, again, kind of the little bit of extra obstacles that we can often face during a retrograde. So that's really good. Now, also, last point on the retrograde, and then we're going to wrap it up. The post shadow is actually in effect all the way until May 14th. This is the moment when we are integrating the lessons learned during the retrograde. We might even find that certain things do kind of bleed into the next couple of weeks. Of course, that's life, right? Not every situation is just going to end the day that retrograde ends. And so we might find that there are some reverberations, right? We might notice that we have to still kind of clean up any loose ends. Maybe there's a couple final things we have to, touch up or put a bow on before we really, leave that chapter behind. And so with that being said, just know that the next few weeks could also be really beneficial for integrating the lessons that we learned during the retrograde and also taking action on them. And that's really the main point I want to make with that. The post shadow is a time of integration, but it's also a time when we can put into motion the plans that we made during the retrograde. So if you were in, hibernation mode, if you were in reflection mode, if you were really working on things but not necessarily pushing it out yet, now that the retrograde is over, start to think about how you can start pushing that out, right? Start to think about ways that you can implement the things and the lessons and the situations that occurred during the retrograde and the eclipse. A lot of major changes have gone on. How can you now integrate that back into your regular life now that things are getting a lot more calm, and see these changes really take root, really take effect, right? Taurus season, we're really rooting in. That's the whole point here. We came out of Aries season. Now we're rooting into Taurus season and making all those ideas and all that excitement really real. So lots to look forward to with that. And so that wraps us up. That really wraps us up for this week. 2 major cosmic events. And again, this is kind of the green light week. We're not fully out of the clear. Maybe I should say orange, because we're not fully out of the clear in the sense that this full moon can feel a bit intense. And we do still have up until the 25th, which is, a little bit later into the week, of still being in the midst of the retrograde. And I must say that often that retrograde energy gets most potent right around the time that it stations either retrograde or, in this case, even direct. So don't be surprised if you get hit with a little last minute encore, retrograde encore. But the good news is that, we are on the tail end of things. So it's on its way out, basically. So with that, you guys, have a beautiful week. Like I said, it's a green light week. You can do those lunar rituals. You can, eventually by the end of this week, you can do all the things that you weren't doing during your retrograde. And next week, we are really getting into May. And again, if you are interested in getting a personal reading for May, if you want to know what is on the horizon for you this upcoming month, only $50, an hour with me. We can sit down over Zoom and chat and just see where the planets are activating for you, what is getting activated in your life, what areas of life to pay attention to, and also ways that you can work with that energy. So if you got value from this video, please make sure you hit the like button. And as always, book a reading. The link is below if you're interested, if you want to join us this summer. If you just want to chat with me, if you have any questions, my inbox is always open. I'm sending you all so much love. Have a beautiful week, and I'll see you all again next Sunday.